We've been having a ball with this for a while, and I say we, and my wife and I were both, we listen, we try to practice what we've learned, and what has been so amazing is how fast things have changed. And we've done a lot of work to get to where we are, but just over the last couple of years, in financial matters and those kinds of things, it's just wild how fast it's changed, and through this process. And we're going through even more growth here, and sometimes I'm just not sure how to live this new life. I mean, it's so much.
Don't worry, it will never get more than you can receive. In other words, if you're not up for it, it's not the next logical step. And if you are up for it, it is. So everything that's coming, embrace it and pat yourself on the back.
Well, that's on the way up here. We stopped at a couple of car dealerships, and it's been funny. We need to buy a new car for Liz, and we kept riding around looking, and we could not see anything that we liked. Every day we're driving and you're looking at cars. We said we couldn't see anything we liked. But that wasn't true. Actually, I knew exactly what I liked. But I was saying, oh, well, that would be so extravagant. But I can afford it. So we actually stopped at the Jaguar dealership on the way up here. And that just blows my mind. And of course, we looked at it for a while, and I said, well, I couldn't buy this unless I fell in love. And he said, you won't fall in love until you drive it. And so we did. And now we're trying to figure out which color. And that's, it's just, so what has happened as this changes is I almost feel like I'm bragging to even talk about it. And I don't know how to feel about that. I called an old friend of mine, someone I grew up with, and we always touch base every now and then, and he told me about what was going on in his life, and I started to tell him about what was going on in mine. And when I got off the telephone, I thought, I just sound like I'm just way over the top with this, and all I was really trying to do was share just how incredible our experience is.
Well, you may have got a small dose of different vibrational frequencies. And we understand your hesitation. In other words, how much of my good feelings should I share with others? And
Correct.
we say, as much as they can take. And you'll know that by whether he ever calls back again.
I don't have a lot of questions here today. I raised my hand to basically say if you wanted to hear what I had to say, I would raise my hand and you would call on me. All I want to say is that the more we align, the more we get. It's amazing what's coming. It's the only things that aren't working are there's just like these little mosquitoes, and it's real weird. We just went to Ireland and our bags didn't arrive. I don't know what I did to think of that. Like the guy was up here earlier. Why think about that? Why did that happen? Doesn't matter. But there's these little physical things. They're little things. It's like we were going to go hiking in this one area of Ireland, and the day we checked into this phenomenal spa, and it's all this beautiful stuff. And that was the day my knee decided to just quit working. So all I could do was sit in the hot tub and soak and walk around in my bathrobe and slippers for 2 days. Hey, I wanted to hike in those mountains.
Well, that is tough to take.
All I could do was look at them. I just, it's just amazing, and that's
what... Well, what that's all about, and the reason that we are so happy to chew with you here a little bit is because as we talk with so many of you here, most of you who come to these gatherings have an emotional set point or practice point that is somewhere around frustration and overwhelmment all the way up into joy. In other words, that's usually your range. And so things are usually going well for you, and you dip higher in many things and lower in few things, but you're usually feeling very well. But you are teachers of those who are often having experiences that are not quite like that, like the friend that you were talking to that has so many more things that are going wrong right now than right. And so we want to begin by saying that in the same way that finding a thought of anger can be great relief from a disempowering feeling of depression. That there is relief in that feeling of anger. We want to say that there is relief also in the feeling of frustration as you leave anger behind. And then we want to say that there's also relief as you leave frustration behind. And we want to say it in a way that you can really hear it, that there is the potential for relief indefinitely. In other words, we do not know of any ending point to the amount of clarity and adventure and joy and well-being. It is an unlimited thing, you see. So what you've done is you've had things in your life that were troublesome, and you lined your energy up and you felt the relief of it, and you bring yourself into better and better and better and better and better feeling places. And now, in your own words, and they're good words, you're fine-tuning. In other words, there's always room for improvement. And these little nitpicking things, they are still things that are annoying that you would feel happier without. Esther has had a rash of computer glitches. And she said to Jerry the other day, I've discovered that I am the common denominator. Because some of them are happening with LinkSpot, which has nothing to do with our coach, and some of them are happening with my airport card, which has nothing to do with LinkSpot, and some of them have to do with my satellite dish, which has nothing to do with either one of those, and some of them have to do with operating system 10 in the sound machine, which has nothing to do with those. In other words, it's her trepidation as she's moving into new unknown places, so she doesn't feel as stable and she doesn't feel as secure. Her emotional journey is one of unknown, and so as she takes the emotional journey and instead of feeling adventure, she feels trepidation, then that emotional journey finds a way of showing her more evidence of what she's really feeling. In other words, she's got to clean up her vibration. And it's funny, those like Esther and those like you that have so many things going well, who really worked harder at it when you had more things that you needed to line up, now sometimes you think that you can just be very diligent about thinking things about my body or about my work or about the big things that really matter, but then you get sloppy when you think about your computer. And we want you to turn everything into an emotional journey. In other words, we want Esther to have computer problems and feel stable. We want her to have computer problems because that's the path that she's sort of laid out. We want her to have computer problems and feel that they are temporary. We want her to feel the light at the end of the tunnel rather than the endless loop of one thing after another. In other words, she's got to find a different vibrational stance, you see. So it is with all of you. You will never reach the place where you can say, I no longer have to tend to my vibration, because part of who you are is someone on an eternal quest for more. And the more means more stuff to consider and more stuff to align within, you see. And in time, you and Esther are both going to come to this joyous awareness that that is the fun of the journey. In other words, the fun of the journey is not walking into a perfect place. The fun of the journey is tweaking it into the perfect place. The fun of the journey is forming the idea and aligning with the idea and bringing yourself into alignment with the idea and watching the fulfillment of the idea, and then stepping into a new place with new data which launches a new idea that you're not in alignment with, that you now work to come in alignment to, that launches the new idea that you're not in alignment with, that you work to get into alignment with. In other words, this is the fun of creation. Otherwise, there is stagnation. And you cannot deal with stagnation, you see. You are an eternal being, always moving forward. So the emotional journey that we want you to begin to consider is things always work well for me, and it doesn't matter where I am, and I'm never going to get it done, and there's always more fun, and I will always have more data to chew on and more decisions to make and more things to tweak into place, and it will never slow down for me. There will always be more, and I'm up to the task, and I'm up to speed with the energy, and isn't it fun? Yes.
One of the things I was laughing about today over lunch, because we were talking about this, and I came to the realization that I actually thought if I bought that car, I wouldn't want anything else.
Well,
I mean, for a moment, I was like, I needed delayed gratification for some reason so that I could work for that or something.
That's the game Jerry plays too. It's he doesn't want to use all the good stuff up too fast. And Esther keeps promising him that the good stuff is coming faster than he can use it. In other words, she feels confidence that the stream is bigger than his ability to let it come in, you see. But Jerry is like you. He's a saver. In other words, why not fully enjoy something rather than skim the surface and move on to something else to enjoy? And Esther's feeling is, why not just enjoy everything? But the balance that you're looking for, in other words, if you're skipping to the next new because you feel unfulfilled here, there's imbalance in that. Mm-hmm. If you are skipping to the next new because it's calling you, then there's perfect alignment there. And nobody can tell you whether you're moving too slow or whether you're moving too fast. That's an individual thing. In other words, you've got to find your own balance. And it's interesting as we watch you pairing off and then setting forth to find your individual balance. In other words, sometimes relative to things to do, Jerry will open the floodgates and say yes to everything. In other words, he will work on 5 projects at the same time joyously.
Sounds familiar.
But he doesn't want to buy 5 cars at the same time. And Esther thinks that's illogical. And we say to each his own. In other words, whatever it takes to bring you into alignment, have your own emotional journey. And here's the thing that we so much want you to hear. Now, we don't feel discord between you and your mate, but the subject of co-creating is a little trickier for most people than the subject of just individual creating. And in reality, there's very little individual creating going on. You're dovetailing and interacting with so many others. So we want to apply this subject of co-creating to this understanding of these concurrent journeys that you are running on. And we want you to consider that if you are making every effort to turn everything into an emotional journey, and you are determined to feel good as you define what the emotional journey is that you are upon. In other words, you know the emotions that you're moving from what to what, and you are diligently, in a very focused way, reaching for the improved relief, the improved relief, the improved relief. What begins to happen is you begin to discover that you could be co-creating with one other or 10 other or many others who seem to want different methods to get to the end result of feeling good. So it seems like you really want different things or are even choosing different paths. But when you tend to your emotional journey and the partner that you're working with tends to their emotional journey, the universe will cleverly give you both exactly what you want. In other words, yes. When you tend to the emotional journey, this universe has the resources and the cleverness to orchestrate for each of you what you exactly want, even when you think they are opposites one from another. It's great fun to watch.
Thanks.
Yes, indeed.
I wanted to share a quote from one of the recent publications that I got from you all, the Quarterly Journal, and I thought it was really good. And if y'all don't have a well-being card for this, I think this would be perfect because it's really helped me. I put it on a note card, obviously. But it says, everything in its perfect time, everything is unfolding, and I'm enjoying where I am now in relationship to where I'm going, content where I am and eager for more.
We agree. That's the perfect vibrational stance.
Part of this, too, is things that have been really helpful to me recently have been...
Before you go further, let's talk about that just a little bit. Sure. Content where I am, meaning not beating the drum of lack, but clear that more is coming, so forward looking. So identifying what I want with no resistance. That's what that's saying. And it also says, content with where I am, meaning I'm making the very best of where I am while I'm looking forward to what else is coming. In other words, can you feel the concurrent journeys that are running along here together and the emotional journey that is implied there?
Right. And visualizing, too, the end result of what it is you do want, keeping that in the forefront of your mind. And I know that you say don't worry about the details that are supposed to occur along that journey.
We say don't worry about them, but we don't say don't anticipate them or don't speculate or don't thrill yourself with them. We never say that. In other words, don't worry means don't worry about what's not happening. Don't activate the absence of what you want. Okay. The rule of thumb is be as specific as you can be and still feel good. So if you get too specific, you start not feeling so good. And if you're not specific enough, you don't feel so good. Mm-hmm. So there again, it's that keeping track of how you feel as you think about it.